As we rise into this new Tuesday, December 9, 2025, we step into the presence of God with intention, with clarity, and with the quiet strength that comes from knowing we are never walking into a day unprepared. This morning is not an accident, nor is it a continuation of yesterday. This is a divine appointment. In a moment, heaven has carved out for you to recalibrate your spirit, align your mind, and set the atmosphere of your day before anything else has a chance to speak into it, before the world rushes in with its noise and demands. We pause to acknowledge the one who governs time, seasons, and every unfolding detail of our journey. As you breathe in this new morning, allow your spirit to recognize that God has gone ahead of you. Nothing you will face today is catching him by surprise. Nothing stands before you that his power cannot handle. There is a fresh release assigned to you, new mercies, renewed strength, and the quiet confidence that comes when you choose to begin your day in communion rather than chaos. You are not here to drip through the hours ahead. You are here to command them, anchor them in prayer, and declare the will of God over every step you take. This morning, let your soul settle into the truth that heaven responds when you speak with faith. Your words carry weight. Your prayers shift alignments. Your declarations open doors that no human hand could push open for you. As we move into this time of prayer, come with expectation, come with posture, come with awareness that God is positioning your day, your thoughts, and your path for victory. Today is not just another day, it is one you will command, one you will shape with prayer, and one in which God will meet you with everything you need. Establishing spiritual authority over the day before anything else begins is an intentional act of recognizing that the morning is not just a moment in time, but a gateway into everything that will unfold. When you rise and choose to take command of your day, you acknowledge that the unseen realm shapes the seen, that what happens in your spirit will eventually materialize in your circumstance. You understand that each morning is a spiritual threshold, a place where you decide who and what will influence the direction of your steps. It is in this early stillness, before conversations begin, before responsibilities press, before noise gathers itself around your thoughts, that you deliberately take your place in alignment with God. You are not waking up to react, you are waking up to lead. You are stepping into your day aware that the authority God has entrusted to you is not passive, but activated through intention, prayer, and the posture of your heart. This awareness invites you to center yourself, to quiet your internal world, to recognize that God has already orchestrated the path, but waits for your agreement to walk it with clarity, confidence, and spiritual precision. Taking authority is not about striving. It is about surrendering to divine order and affirming that your life is governed by the one who created you. As you rise, your spirit senses that the world will try to shape you if you do not establish your ground. Thoughts will come, expectations will press, demands will attempt to pull you in multiple directions. But when you root yourself in spiritual authority, you set the tone for everything else. You decide the rhythm of your inner world. You decide the atmosphere that surrounds you. You decide the lens through which you interpret every experience. This is the power of commanding your day. Instead of entering the hours ahead passively, you speak into them with purpose. You declare what will and will not enter your space. You affirm who you are and whose you are. You anchor your identity in God before the world has a chance to project anything else onto you. When you stand in this place of authority, you speak with a knowing that your words are not empty. They carry weight because they are backed by faith, backed by alignment, backed by the truth that heaven responds to the voice of the believer who speaks with certainty and spiritual awareness. There is a shift that happens when you begin your morning from the position of authority rather than anxiety. Instead of waking up and immediately engaging the pressures of the day, you pause and take your rightful place in the presence of God. You breathe deeply. You settle yourself. You remind your soul that God has entrusted you with dominion, with the ability to speak life, to redirect negative energy, to dismantle spiritual interference, and to call forth peace, clarity, and alignment. You remind yourself that you are not at the mercy of circumstances. You are not a passenger in your own day. You are a steward of it. You carry the responsibility to shape it, to cover it in prayer, to release words that harmonize your steps with divine timing. This posture forms a shield around your mind. It constructs a barrier against confusion. It reinforces the truth that you walk under the authority of heaven. And because of that, nothing that comes against you has the power to override what God has ordained when you choose to speak with conviction. And when you take spiritual authority early in the morning, you are not speaking into empty space. You are addressing the environment around you. You are confronting anything that might try to rise against your peace. You are establishing boundaries. You are clarifying your intentions before the day can pull you in directions that weaken your focus. You understand that the morning is fertile ground, that whatever you plant in the early hours becomes the harvest you carry into the rest of your day. If you plant fear, you carry instability. If you plant doubt, you carry indecision. But if you plant faith, clarity, and purpose, you walk through the day with the assurance that God is already ahead of you. Taking authority means you speak life before any negativity tries to attach itself to you. You declare peace before conflict arises. You declare strength before challenges appear. You declare wisdom before decisions are required. You set the standard for how your spirit will move long before anything external attempts to influence it. Spiritual authority is not loud, it is grounded. It doesn't require emotional intensity. It requires spiritual awareness. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you have been given the power to speak over your environment, over your thoughts, over your path. It is recognizing that you do not wake up empty-handed. You wake up equipped, covered, strengthened, and empowered. The authority you carry is not borrowed. It is inherent in your identity as a child of God. Beginning your day with this mindset shifts the entire trajectory of your hours. You become more intentional, more discerning, more attentive to the movements of God throughout the day. You notice divine opportunities you would have overlooked. You navigate challenges with stability instead of reaction. You carry a calm that cannot be disrupted because you anchored yourself before life had a chance to pull you off center. When you command your day through spiritual authority, you are not trying to control outcomes, you are aligning them. You are not demanding that life unfold on your terms. You are positioning yourself so that God's plan flows through you with greater ease. You are stepping into a spiritual rhythm where you can hear God more clearly, respond more wisely, and move more purposefully. Establishing authority allows you to approach your day as someone who is guided rather than tossed, centered rather than scattered, empowered rather than overwhelmed. You understand that your morning sets the spiritual climate. You understand that your words build a framework for how you will perceive, interpret, and respond to what unfolds. You understand that authority is not about force, but about alignment, not about striving, but about surrendering your day to the one who governs all things, while still recognizing the power he has placed in your voice. As you speak into your morning, you are calling your spirit into order. You are commanding your emotions to abide in peace. You are instructing your mind to remain clear and stable. You are choosing focus over distraction, purpose over passivity, clarity over confusion. You enter your day grounded in truth rather than drifting on uncertainty. Establishing spiritual authority is about taking ownership of the inner world that shapes your entire experience. It is about acknowledging that you cannot determine everything that happens to you, but you can absolutely determine the spirit in which you face it. Your morning declarations become the compass of your day, guiding you toward alignment and keeping you anchored in the presence of God as you move through each moment with intention and centered strength. Aligning thoughts, emotions, and intentions with God's will at the start of the morning is a practice that shapes the internal landscape before the day has an opportunity to imprint anything upon you. When you wake and choose alignment, you are acknowledging that your inner world is the birthplace of every decision, reaction, and movement you will make. You understand that your thoughts are not random, they are pathways. Your emotions are not passive. They carry influence. Your intentions are not small. They set the direction for the steps you will take. Bringing all of these parts of yourself under the influence of God's presence is not only an act of surrender, but an act of wisdom. It is recognizing that without alignment, the heart can drift, the mind can wander, and intentions can scatter themselves across unimportant opportunities and draining expectations. Morning alignment is an act of recalibration, a moment where you allow your spirit to breathe, settle, and synchronize with the rhythm of heaven before the world demands your attention. When you begin your day with this posture, you create space for clarity. You allow God to guide your thought patterns even before they form fully. You invite the presence of the Holy Spirit to filter through the emotions that may be lingering from yesterday, cleansing what no longer serves you and fortifying what will carry you forward with strength and stability. Alignment establishes a spiritual center point, a place you can return to, a place that steadies you, a place that holds you together even when the pace of the day tries to unravel you. It is in this quiet beginning that you make the decision not to be shaped by external pressures, but by divine influence. You remind yourself that you are not entering the day alone, confused or unprepared. You are entering it anchored in God's mind, steady in His peace, and committed to His direction. Thought alignment is a powerful element of this process because your thoughts are the architects of your actions. What you meditate on in the morning becomes the lens through which you interpret the rest of your day. If your mind is cluttered with worry, the smallest challenge will feel heavy. If your mind is filled with doubt, new opportunities will feel intimidating. But when you align your thoughts with God's truth, when you remind yourself of His faithfulness, His promises, His presence, you begin to see the world through a lens of possibility rather than limitation. The morning becomes a moment where you intentionally choose what kind of mental environment you will carry. Alignment helps you build a mindset of clarity, resilience, and spiritual confidence. It helps you stay focused when distractions arise. It helps you remain stable when uncertainty tries to pull you off balance. It helps you choose responses rooted in wisdom instead of reactions rooted in fear. Emotional alignment is just as significant because emotions can either strengthen you or scatter you. Many people wake up carrying emotional residue, stress from yesterday, fear about tomorrow, disappointment from unmet expectations, or heaviness they didn't resolve the night before. When you intentionally align your emotions with God early in the morning, you are giving Him access to the places where you need healing, calming, cleansing, or strengthening. You are acknowledging that your emotions are valid but not sovereign, real but not rulers. Emotional alignment doesn't mean suppressing how you feel. It means inviting God into your feelings and allowing Him to shape their direction. It means letting peace replace anxiety, letting hope rise above discouragement, letting joy find its way into places where heaviness tried to settle. It means recognizing that emotional clarity is not accidental. It is cultivated by choosing to let God be the center of your inner world, rather than the circumstances you face. Intentional alignment ties everything together. It is the quiet decision you make about how you will approach your day. Intentions are like seeds. They determine what you will grow. If your intentions are rooted in hurried energy, you will rush through the day without grounding. If your intentions are scattered, you will drift from one moment to the next without direction. But when your intentions are aligned with God, they begin to carry a divine precision. You step into your day aware of what matters and what does not. You know what to invest your energy into and when to step back. You move with purpose rather than aimlessness. Intentional alignment helps you discern what God is highlighting and what He is quieting. It shifts you from reacting to everything around you to responding from a place of spiritual clarity and groundedness. This alignment creates a sense of spiritual harmony. Your thoughts, your emotions, and your will begin to work together rather than working against one another. Instead of your mind competing with your feelings or your intentions, pulling you in a direction different from your spirit, everything begins to operate under the same influence. You feel lighter. You feel more centered. You feel more aware of God's presence woven through every part of your internal being. This alignment empowers you to move through the day with a peace that does not rise and fall with circumstances. It helps you maintain clarity, even in the midst of pressure. It strengthens your spiritual sensitivity so you can recognize when God is redirecting you, cautioning you, or nudging you forward. Aligning with God in the morning trains your spirit to lead instead of follow. It teaches you to allow the Spirit of God to set the tone for your day rather than your mood, your schedule, or other people's expectations. When your thoughts align with Him, you operate with insight. When your emotions align with Him, you operate with stability. When your intentions align with Him, you operate with purpose. And when all three align together, you walk through the day with a strength that does not depend on how easy or difficult the day becomes. You carry a divine awareness, a grounded confidence, a steady peace that becomes a shield around your heart and a guide to your steps. This kind of alignment also impacts how you hear God throughout the day. When your inner world is settled and synchronized with His presence, your sensitivity increases. You notice His whispers. You recognize divine timing. You feel nudges in your spirit when you need to pause, when you need to speak, when you need to wait, when you need to step forward. Alignment sharpens your spiritual discernment. It helps you see beyond the surface. It helps you understand what God is doing, even when circumstances are unclear. It allows you to remain attentive to the movements of the Spirit, even in the busyness of your schedule. This alignment becomes a spiritual posture that carries you, stabilizes you, and grounds you. It is the quiet discipline of choosing not to let the world dictate the direction of your inner world. It is the gentle, intentional act of saying, God, shape my mind, calm my emotions, guide my intentions, and align every part of me with your will today. This posture does not make the day effortless, but it makes you steady, full. It does not remove challenges, but it strengthens you to navigate them. It does not eliminate uncertainty, but it gives you clarity in the midst of it. As you begin each morning with this kind of alignment, you cultivate a life that becomes increasingly anchored in God's presence. You learn to recognize His hand in the small details. You begin to carry peace into places filled with pressure. You begin to speak from a place of clarity rather than confusion. Your reactions become measured. Your steps become intentional. Your decisions become wiser. Alignment shapes you into someone who moves with spiritual maturity, someone who does not simply drift through the day, but walks through it guided, grounded, and aware of divine direction. This is why aligning your thoughts, emotions, and intentions with God's will in the morning is not just a practice, it is a lifestyle. It is a way of honoring God with your inner world. It is a way of preparing your spirit for everything that lies ahead. It is a way of ensuring that you move into your day with strength instead of fragmentation. It is an act of stewardship over your mind, your heart, and your purpose. It becomes a sacred rhythm that allows you to live with clarity, serenity, focus, and spiritual authority. It becomes the daily moment where everything within you bows to the presence of God and rises again, strengthened, centered, and aligned for the day ahead. Activating divine protection and clarity through deliberate, faithful declarations sets a spiritual covering over your day before anything else has the opportunity to influence your mind or your atmosphere. When you choose to speak with intention in the morning, you are not simply forming words, you are creating spiritual structure. You are building a shelter around your thoughts, your emotions, your steps, and your interaction. You are acknowledging that every day carries its own demands, its own challenges, its own surprises, but you are also acknowledging that you do not walk into any of it uncovered. Your declarations become a shield, a guide, and a stabilizing force that presses back against anything that is not aligned with God's will for your life. They help you navigate the day with focus, confidence, and a sense of being spiritually fortified. This kind of intentional speaking is not ritualistic, it is relational. It is rooted in your awareness that heaven responds when you speak in faith and that God honors the words that align with his truth. When you speak divine protection over your life, you are aligning yourself under God's covering. You are calling your steps into the safety of his presence. You are recognizing that protection is not just about avoiding harm, it is about walking in divine order. It is about being positioned where God needs you to be. It is about being shielded from distractions, traps, spiritual interference, and anything crafted to pull your focus or drain your strength. When you declare protection, you are not entertaining fear, you are operating from awareness. You are acknowledging that the spiritual realm is active and you choose not to move through it unguarded. You take your place under God's wings, not with hesitation, but with confidence that he is your fortress, your defender, your safeguard. Speaking protection is you choosing to fortify your environment, commanding every space you enter to align with the peace, safety, and covering of God. Clarity is equally essential because clarity determines how you interpret everything you encounter. Without clarity, the day becomes cluttered. Your thoughts race, your decisions feel cloudy, your emotions get tangled, and your sense of direction becomes uncertain. But when you declare clarity in the morning, you are consciously calling your mind into alignment with divine insight. You are asking God to sharpen your discernment. You are choosing to silence confusion before it has the chance to settle. Clarity helps you identify what is from God and what is distraction. It helps you recognize opportunities without hesitation. It helps you engage conversations with wisdom rather than reaction. It helps you navigate the unexpected with grounded confidence instead of spiraling into doubt or fear. Clarity does not mean the day will be perfect. It means you will be spiritually equipped to interpret what happens through the right lens. Faith-filled declarations fuse protection and clarity together. They remind you that your words have spiritual weight. You are not speaking based on emotion, you are speaking based on identity. You understand that as someone who walks with God, you have the authority to speak life, speak peace, speak order, and speak alignment. Each declaration becomes a boundary, a direction, a spiritual command that shapes the atmosphere you carry into the day. When you declare that your mind is stable, you reinforce the truth that your thoughts will not be scattered. When you declare that your steps are ordered, you position yourself to walk with intention rather than confusion. When you declare that your spirit is anchored, you stabilize your emotions before they can be influenced by anything external. These declarations shift your internal posture. They awaken your spirit. They remind your soul that you are not powerless, you are not unprotected, and you are not without guidance. Every deliberate declaration you speak in the morning builds a framework for your entire day. You are deciding what will govern your thoughts, what will influence your heart, what will follow you into conversations, and what will guide your decisions. Without declarations, the day can shape you without your permission. But with declarations, you shape the day through the authority God has placed within you. You are choosing to anchor yourself before the world attempts to sway you. You are choosing to clarify your purpose before distractions try to pull you off course. You are choosing to surround your life with spiritual fortification before challenges appear. Speaking protection and clarity is not about controlling circumstances. It is about strengthening your spirit so you can meet those circumstances from a higher place. This act of intentionally declaring truth also rewires the atmosphere within you. The moment you open your mouth and speak faith, something shifts internally. Fear begins to lose its grip. Doubt begins to dissolve. Anxiety begins to calm. You create an environment within your mind where God's presence can speak clearly. You create a space where your emotions can settle, where your thoughts can breathe, where your intentions can align with purpose. Declarations transform your inner world, making it easier for you to recognize God's voice, easier for you to make sound decisions, and easier for you to remain steady even when the day becomes challenging. Divine protection is not only about external safety, it is also about internal defense. When you declare protection over your mind, you are setting a boundary against negative thoughts, discouraging voices, and emotional turbulence. When you declare protection over your heart, you are shielding yourself from offense, disappointment, and emotional burdens that try to weigh you down. When you declare protection over your steps, you are asking God to lead you away from anything that is not meant for you. You are choosing to be guided by divine wisdom rather than by impulse or pressure. This protection covers your spirit, ensuring that you move through the day with strength and steadiness. Clarity enhances this protection. With clarity, you can discern what is distraction and what is direction. You can sense when God is opening a door and when he is closing one. You can identify when your emotions are speaking and when your spirit is speaking. Clarity sharpens your perception. It allows you to see beyond what is happening on the surface. It keeps you from reacting prematurely. It keeps you from taking on burdens that are not yours to carry. When you declare clarity, you are asking God to make your path visible, your decisions stable, and your spirit receptive. Together, protection and clarity help you remain spiritually aligned throughout the day. You walk with a sense of guidance, an internal knowing that you are not navigating life alone. You feel supported, you feel watched over, you feel steady, and even when unexpected situations arise, you do not crumble because you have already spoken stability into your spirit. You have already declared peace over your mind. You have already called forth wisdom for your decisions. You have already established the atmosphere in which you will move. This practice becomes a sacred rhythm, a moment each morning where you shape your environment before stepping into it. You are not only preparing yourself, you are preparing the day. You are aligning your mind with truth, your spirit with power, and your path with divine guidance. When you speak these declarations consistently, you begin to notice a pattern. You navigate challenges more gracefully. You make decisions with more confidence. You communicate more clearly, and you feel less shaken by unexpected events. Your spirit becomes trained, strengthened, and grounded through the practice of speaking life at the start of each new day. These declarations also become reminders throughout the day. When pressure arises, you remember what you spoke. When confusion tries to slip in, you recall the clarity you declared. When fear attempts to whisper, you remember the protection you established. These words echo in your spirit, bringing you back into alignment every time something tries to pull you away. They become anchors that hold you steady, guides that keep you focused, and shields that protect your peace. Speaking divine protection and clarity is an act of spiritual stewardship. It is you tending to your inner world with care. It is you acknowledging that your mind, your emotions, and your spirit require intentional covering. It is you embracing the authority God has given you to speak life, to shape the atmosphere, and to influence the direction of your day. This practice transforms the way you move through life. It strengthens you, it centers you, it stabilizes you, and it prepares you to walk through everything that unfolds with a heart grounded in peace, a mind clear with purpose, and a spirit fortified with divine strength. When you step into the morning with a heart tuned toward God, you begin to position yourself to recognize His guidance in ways you might have otherwise overlooked. So much of life moves quickly, and your mind can easily be pulled in several directions at once. But when you deliberately pause to acknowledge God at the start of the day, you create space within your spirit to perceive the gentle instructions He releases moment by moment. It is in these quiet places of surrender that clarity begins to rise, and what once felt confusing begins to settle into order. Seeking His guidance is not about trying to force answers to appear. It is about setting the posture of your heart to be attentive, to be available, to be willing to receive insight that isn't born from your own understanding. When you position yourself to recognize God's guidance, you are deciding to walk through the day with spiritual perception instead of natural assumptions. You are embracing the reality that God has already gone ahead of you and has prepared a path, a strategy, a direction, and a flow uniquely crafted for where He is sending you. As you begin the day in prayer, your inner world becomes more aligned with the movements of the Holy Spirit. Instead of being tossed by impulses, worries, or sudden pressures, you become anchored in God's presence. This anchoring trains your spiritual senses to discern the difference between noise and instruction. Sometimes His guidance comes as a gentle nudge, a quiet conviction, a subtle thought you might have dismissed if you weren't spiritually attentive. Other times it comes with a strong push, a bold impression, or a clear prompting that directs you toward a specific action. By positioning yourself in prayer, you become sensitive not only to what God is saying, but to the timing in which He is saying it. You begin to recognize when to move, when to wait, when to speak, and when to remain silent. This sensitivity grows each time you choose to acknowledge Him at the start of the day, inviting His wisdom to saturate your steps. You position yourself to recognize God's guidance when you allow your mind to be renewed in the early hours before the demands of life begin to compete for your attention. A renewed mind does not lean on panic or urgency to make decisions. It does not allow fear to dictate choices. It does not surrender to confusion. Instead, a renewed mind becomes a vessel that God can direct with ease. Prayer opens the corridors of your mind so that divine insight can flow unhindered. You start to interpret situations not at face value, but from a place of discernment. You begin to feel when something is not aligned with where God is leading you. You begin to sense when an opportunity is meant for you or when it is a distraction. You start to recognize the quiet alerts within your spirit that God uses to protect you from unnecessary battles. Your day becomes less about reacting and more about responding through the clarity God places within you. When you position yourself to recognize God's guidance, you are also training your emotions to yield to His presence instead of being ruled by circumstances. Emotional stability is one of the greatest gifts that prayer cultivates within you. It keeps you from being swayed by sudden news, unexpected challenges, or the actions of others. When your emotions are anchored in God's peace, you are able to perceive His direction even in the midst of movement around you. You are able to hear His voice even when the situation feels loud. You are able to stay steady even when things shift suddenly. This steadiness becomes a spiritual advantage because it allows you to stay aligned with God's instructions instead of being pulled into reactions that drain your strength or cloud your judgment. Positioning yourself to recognize God's guidance is also about inviting Him into the practical areas of your day. It is not limited to big spiritual decisions. It includes relationships, conversations, tasks, assignments, and responsibilities. It includes knowing when to rest and when to push forward. It includes sensing when a conversation requires grace, patience, firmness, or wisdom. It includes knowing when to walk away from something that no longer serves your calling and when to hold on to something that God is still using to shape you. When you acknowledge God in all things, you begin to see his fingerprints in places you used to overlook. You begin to notice how he orchestrates timing, aligns opportunities, brings people into your life, and removes obstacles before you even encounter them. So this awareness becomes clearer the more you practice inviting him into every moment. There is a divine rhythm that becomes accessible when you choose to start your morning in prayer. You begin to move with heaven's timing instead of the pressure of earthly schedules. You begin to flow with God's pace instead of the rush of your own expectations. This rhythm carries you throughout the day, helping you navigate complex situations with a calmness that doesn't make sense in the natural. It is in this rhythm that guidance becomes recognizable. You start to feel God leading you step by step, not always through dramatic signs, but through a consistent inner knowing. He guides you through your spirit, illuminating the next step, even when the full picture isn't visible yet. Positioning yourself to recognize God's guidance also requires trust. Trust opens your spirit to receive direction, even when you cannot fully understand the why behind it. It teaches you to move forward without resisting his instructions or leaning on logic alone. There are moments when the path God sets before you won't look like the most convenient or the most predictable option. There are moments when he leads you away from things you once desired or toward things you didn't expect. When you start your day acknowledging him, you cultivate the trust needed to follow him without hesitation. Trust silences the inner dialogue of doubt and fear. Trust strengthens your willingness to obey. Trust sharpens your ability to recognize his voice among all the other voices that compete for your attention. As you continue this practice daily, you notice that God's guidance becomes easier to identify. You begin to recognize patterns in how he speaks to you. You begin to notice how he confirms things in your spirit. You begin to understand the language of his presence in your life. The more you expose your heart to the presence of God each morning, the more familiar his leading becomes. What once felt unclear begins to make sense. What once felt distant begins to feel close. What once felt difficult to perceive becomes a natural part of your thinking, your choices, and your movements throughout the day. This posture of spiritual attentiveness becomes a lifestyle. It becomes a way of walking with God that flows from the moment you rise. It becomes the lens through which you interpret everything that comes your way. It becomes the atmosphere that surrounds you. As you move through assignments, responsibilities, and interactions, you are no longer simply going through the motions of the day. You are walking in partnership with the Holy Spirit, guided by his wisdom, strengthened by his presence, and sensitive to his direction. Cultivating an atmosphere of expectation that welcomes God's provision and direction begins with the way you posture your heart at the beginning of the day. Expectation is not wishful thinking, nor is it an emotional high that comes and goes depending on how life feels in the moment. Expectation is a spiritual stance. It is a decision to believe that God is actively moving in your life, that he is already working behind the scenes, and that he is preparing paths, answers, resources, relationships, and opportunities long before you even see the evidence of them. When you cultivate expectation, you are choosing to rise each morning with a spirit that is open, receptive, and ready for God to show himself strong. You are not stepping into the day with uncertainty or fear. You are stepping into it with a sense of spiritual alertness that says, God, I know you are moving and I position myself to recognize it. This kind of expectation creates an atmosphere around you, an atmosphere where faith grows, where confidence stabilizes, and where doubt loses its authority. Expectation shifts the way you think. Instead of anticipating problems, you begin anticipating solutions. Instead of bracing yourself for conflict, you begin expecting peace. Instead of assuming lack, you begin expecting provision. This shift is not dependent on circumstances. It is anchored in who God is. You cultivate this atmosphere by meditating on His faithfulness, by remembering how He has shown up for you before, by recalling the moments when He opened doors no one else could open, by recognizing the ways He has carried you through situations you thought you would never survive. When your mind is anchored in the history of God's goodness, it becomes easier to expect His goodness again. Your spirit becomes trained to look for His hand at work. Your heart becomes familiar with His movements. Your thoughts lean toward faith instead of fear. Expectation also influences the words you speak. When your heart is cultivated in expectation, your vocabulary shifts. You stop speaking from a place of worry, and you begin speaking from a place of alignment. You begin to declare what God is able to do rather than what you are afraid might happen. You begin to speak life into areas that once felt stagnant. You begin to speak hope into situations that once felt discouraging. Your words become seeds. They shape the atmosphere around you. They open your spirit to receive what God is releasing. They prepare the environment of your heart to welcome provision, guidance, and wisdom. When you speak with expectation, your words carry spiritual weight, and your spirit becomes more sensitive to God's presence. Cultivating expectation also requires letting go of the need to control every outcome. Expectation is not about predicting what God will do. It is about trusting that whatever He does will be right, timely, and aligned with your purpose. This trust frees you from the burden of anxiously trying to manage every detail of your life. It frees you from the pressure of trying to anticipate every possibility. It frees you from the fear of what you cannot see. When you let go of control, you open yourself to divine flow. You allow God to guide your steps, redirect your plans, shift your schedule, or adjust your perspective without resistance. You begin to recognize that His ways are higher, His vision is broader, and His timing is perfect. This release is essential for cultivating expectation because expectation cannot thrive in a heart that is clenched by fear or tightly wound by the need to control the future. An atmosphere of expectation is cultivated through consistency. You do not build expectation with random moments of faith. You build it through daily alignment. Each morning becomes an opportunity to reset your spirit, to quiet your thoughts, to draw near to God, and to prepare your heart for what He desires to release into your life. Some mornings you may wake up feeling strong, focused, and spiritually clear. Other mornings you may feel weary, uncertain, or distracted. But expectation grows when you choose to acknowledge God, even on the days when your emotions are not aligned with your faith. Expectation is strengthened when you press past feelings and choose to stand in truth. You show God that your faith is not circumstantial. You show your spirit that it will not be governed by temporary emotions. You show your mind that it will align with the presence of God rather than the pressures of the day. As you cultivate expectation, your spirit becomes more sensitive to divine direction. God speaks continuously, but expectation sharpens your awareness so you can perceive His voice more clearly. You begin to feel His nudges, His warnings, His confirmations, and His instructions. You begin to recognize when He is redirecting you away from something that is not aligned with your purpose. You begin to sense when He is drawing you toward something that will develop you, strengthen you, or position you for the next season. Expectation keeps your spirit attentive. You walk through the day, not with aimlessness, but with readiness. You become aware that every interaction, every conversation, every delay, every shift may carry divine significance. You approach the day with a sense of spiritual curiosity, wondering how God will reveal Himself, how He will speak, how He will guide, how He will provide. Expectation transforms the way you handle challenges. When difficulties arise, instead of assuming they are barriers, you begin to ask God what He is doing through them. You begin to look for the lessons, the strengthening, the redirection, or the growth hidden within the struggle. Expectation helps you understand that opposition can be a doorway to breakthrough. It helps you realize that delays can be divine protection. It helps you acknowledge that what feels like a setback may actually be a setup for something greater. When you cultivate expectation, your challenges no longer intimidate you the way they used to. You face them with a quiet confidence, knowing that God is working even when you cannot see the full picture. Expectation also affects the way you perceive opportunities. Without expectation, you may overlook moments that God is trying to use to bless you, promote you, develop you, or position you. But when you cultivate an atmosphere of expectation, your eyes become open to opportunities that were always there but previously unnoticed. You become more willing to step out in faith. You become more willing to move forward without hesitating. You become more willing to trust that if God is leading you, then He has already prepared the outcome. Expectation makes you bold. It strengthens your courage. It helps you take steps that align with your calling, even when those steps feel unfamiliar or uncomfortable. Cultivating expectation also impacts your emotional world. Expectation brings stability. When your heart is anchored in the belief that God is at work, your emotions become less reactive. You stop spiraling when circumstances shift unexpectedly. You stop internalizing disappointment in a way that crushes your spirit. You stop allowing fear to dominate your thoughts. Expectation creates emotional resilience. It grounds you, it steadies you, it protects your peace. It keeps your heart from swinging wildly between hope and discouragement. It helps you stay spiritually centered even when life feels uncertain. Expectation is also expressed through gratitude. Gratitude is the language of expectation. When you thank God in advance, you are demonstrating that you believe He is moving even before you see evidence. Gratitude keeps your heart open. Gratitude aligns your spirit with God's character. Gratitude shifts your focus from what is missing to what is possible. When you begin your day with gratitude, you cultivate an environment within yourself where faith can breathe, grow, and expand. This atmosphere of expectation becomes a magnet for divine provision, not because you are trying to manipulate God, but because expectation aligns you with His flow.